A day in the life of Sujay is, I love this idea. It's the greatest thing I've ever heard. This is a stupid idea. We should not be doing this.
Are those the same idea?
Oh, yeah. Multiple times a day.
You're like, Sujay, lie horizontal on the couch.
You talk to my wife or any of those people at Dropbox who work for me. I think they're described as schizophrenia.
Yeah, we can laugh about it. All right, guys, thanks for doing this.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So for people not familiar, can you give a little bit of overview on what you guys do and how the partnership came together?
Well, how the partnership came together is kind of a fun story if you want to,
let's
talk about that.
We got
sometime.
time.
But
at least I do. I don't know if you guys do, but we have some time to do it.
We have infinite time. He sleeps 4 hours a night. So
is that right?
Like literally, I can
is that like a genetic thing?
He exaggerates. It's 5.
Wait, it's
genetic, literally, since I was 15 years old.
Have you ever done like an Aura ring or one of those things to try to figure out, do you get like a disproportionate deep sleep or something, or it's just never?
I've been doing this for 68 years. I don't need to.
You don't need to
be
know.
analytical about it.
It
just works.
I'm more fascinated by the sleep process though, of like the people that can do it, because I can't do it. I can do like 6.5, 7, but the people that can operate on that, I just don't know like what they do differently.
Let me reframe it, because I have to travel with this guy all over the world for now almost a decade. He'll sleep his 4 or 5 hours. He'll go to the gym for 2.5 hours. Then I'll meet him for breakfast. And then we like literally roll meetings or phone calls or like micro meetings that he sets up until like 10 p.m. And this is 5 hours after we landed. And then you just do that in like 4 countries and then you go home.
And you've always been that way?
Always. It's a blessing.
It's fascinating for sure.
You know, the Beatles wrote a song for me. It's called 8 Days a Week.
Yeah, right. I mean, listen, you got far more hours than I do.
It is a competitive advantage.
Totally.
So here's another one. So yes, I sleep 5 hours and 15 minutes, kind of no matter what. I can't sleep 6 or 7 hours. It just doesn't. I wake up staring at the ceiling.
That's crazy.
You know, I don't get jet lag. He'll tell you that's the other thing. It's just no matter where I fly, how long, where, and what time zones I'm going through in it. There's like a thing, you know, on the old fashioned watch where you could turn the time and adjust the watch in it. Somehow or another, I turn my brain to like where we're landing, and I'm now on that time zone. And when I land there, that's it.
Do you guys keep up football fans? Do you guys follow?
A little bit.
Yeah. So Adrian Peterson like tore his ACL and came back like 3 months later or whatever and was playing. Like, I feel like that's what I'm hearing right now. There's some people who are just like genetically built differently.
Here's the other side of it though, which is unfortunate, which is I have fairly extreme dyslexia, and it has very, you know, there are certain aspects of it that they're really, you know, they're real liabilities.
Yeah.
And they're hard that you have to work to overcome. I have over the years, but, you know, with the good comes the
the challenge. Was that diagnosed when you were young or something you figured out later?
40 years old before anybody understood what it was. And so, you know, I invert words. I can't read off a teleprompter. I can't put names and faces together. Like literally, I could run into you tomorrow in a hotel in San Francisco, and we will spend 2 hours together here, and I'll recognize you, but literally, you know, it's like a switchboard. I can't find the plug to.
That's fascinating.
To do
Are
it.
there creative manifestations of it that you like? Do you think that elements of creativity, because it's something you hear, dyslexia can lead to more? Hard to say.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I've asked the question a million times. You know, how do you know what a good idea is? You know, which is what I've spent a lifetime. You know, trying to truffle hunt, find good ideas, and somehow or another, more often than not, you know, I know when an idea is a good idea, and I don't know where it comes from. Again, you know, it's a unique thing to be able
intuition
to be able to listen and to be able to see and to recognize when something is unique and special and could be great as a story, or, you know, what we do together in venture. It's, you know, isn't that sort of like the heart and soul of what we do, which is just find that rare person with those attributes of, you know, persistence and vision and ambition and perseverance. And we can go through all of those things that you would say are fundamental to a great founder. It's also fundamental to a great storyteller.
Yeah, it's interesting. So how did the partnership come to be?
So let's see here. So 2015, I leave Dropbox, figure, we just had a really good run. I think fastest run at that point in the history of software.
An amazing density of talent, by the way.
We can talk about that too for a while. Yeah. And that's one of the best parts of the company. But I think we had gone from a cold start to, when I left, 600 million of ARR in 4.5 years, 5.5 years. And coming off of that, I thought I would just go back to venture capital. I joined Dropbox from NEA, and in the process of talking to many of, the good firms, I just realized my heart wasn't into it. Like, I wasn't excited about it. I liked the building, and I felt a little bit lost because Drew invented a product that at that point 400 or 500 million people were using. I was never going to invent a product that I didn't think that 400 or 500 million people were going to ever use. And so I was sort of in the wilderness, kind of figuring it out. And a friend of mine in New York, who started Spruce House Capital. He's like one of the all-time great guys, and actually a fantastic, interesting investor. Gave me this book, The Outsiders. You've come across this book? Yeah. So I never come across this. This is 2015. And I was like, oh, wow, I can't do what Drew did, which is come up with a product that hundreds of millions of people want to use. But there is a whole, there's like this whole thing in building businesses where it turns out that if you look at the history of tech, many of the great businesses didn't start the way we all storytell them, right? IBM started as a private equity roll-up. And I remember, I'm a student of tech history.
Yeah.
And so I started remembering that book, which I had read, in The Maverick and His Machine, which I had read like in business school or something like that. And I was like, oh, wow, maybe I can do that. And so I started looking for companies to buy. Samir Gandhi at Excel and Joe Lonsdale and I were going to partner up to buy a company, and we were going to go pursue this outsider strategy. And out of nowhere, I get a phone call from Diego Berdakin. I don't know if you've come across Diego. So Diego's the founder of Cloud Kitchens, which Travis is now the CEO of. And Diego's one of my best friends. Diego calls me and said, listen, I just played poker with Jeffrey Katzenberg. He just sold DreamWorks to Comcast. He wants to start a holding company. He saw what Barry Diller had done with IAC. He wanted to start a holding company. I told him that, you've kind of figured out like some of the mechanics of it. Would you be willing to just talk to him and tell him like kind of what you're setting up? And I did. And so we had a great phone call. Of course, I wanted to talk to Jeffrey Katzenberg. And Jeffrey and I talk, and he's like, hey, are you ever in Malibu? And I said, actually, I'm there most weekends right now because a handful of us used to share a beach house in Malibu at that time. And so we had lunch the next Saturday or Sunday. And Jeffrey said, why don't we just do this together? And I was like, why? I mean, obviously, you're whatever, world famous person, but like, and that's cool. But like I'm like a Silicon Valley software guy, you're a Hollywood guy. And over the next 2 months, we talked every day. And in August, we said, let's do this thing.
And what was the vision? Yeah.
So I'll give you my side of that, which is, so when I was 22 years old, I was here in New York City. I had worked for John Lindsay literally since I was a teenager. Just an amazing ride, and sort of saw the world. That was my college education, was the streets of New York. And he ran for president in 1972, failed. Everybody went back to City Hall, and I wanted to go find a career. And I remember at the time actually consciously having this thought of like, I had been exposed to all these amazing things working for Lindsay, and as I was a like advanced body guy, and so I got to see everything. And I thought, I want fortune and fame. And in 1973, too, you want fortune and fame? You go to Hollywood. And in fact, that's what I did. So skip forward. So then there's a connection here in this. Through every chapter of my storytelling career, you can actually go and see that one of the foundational elements of certainly what I think was my success is how aggressive I was in finding state-of-the-art tech for my storytellers. Wherever I was, whatever studio I was at, whatever era I was in, I always looked to what are the best tools to be able to realize the most exciting and interesting stories. I always love the story, when Steven Spielberg first made Jaws, he cut a piece of plywood out in the shape of a shark fin, painted it gray, and dragged it behind a motorboat. That was a special effect. So now think of generationally all of these things that happen with optical effects and digital effects, and then CG animation completely transformed the animation industry, and digital distribution and digital projection. And I could go on and on in this. And so I was constantly having these pilgrimages to Northern California, to the tech world, where I partnered with Hewlett Packard and Andy Grove at Intel and Steve Jobs on Pixar, and on and on in this. And so having, DreamWorks Animation had a studio in Redwood City with 800 artists there. It's actually where the first Shrek movie was made. So back at this, I'm now sell DreamWorks in literally 9 years within a week, I think. And I actually recall that same thought, like, okay, well, if you were 23 years old today, I was 65 or 6 or whatever, so what would you do? And I went, I'd go to Silicon Valley. That's where fortune and fame is today. I also recognize that I know what I know what I don't know. And if you ask me to say, is there a recurring theme or ingredient in the success of different chapters I've had over my career, I would say yes. I would start with, fundamentally, at every one of these chapters, I have had either an amazing mentor or an amazing partner. And that's like foundational to everything great that has happened to me. So I can go back into politics. I won't, but David Pickard, Barry Diller, Michael Eisner, David Geffen, Steven Spielberg, Sujay Jaswa.
Mm.
And I interviewed in this, before I got introduced, before Diego and one other person put the two of us together, I had met 300 people over a series of months, trying to find that partner, that person who knows more than me, knows everything I don't know. And I believe that at that time I had found that in Sujay, and 9 years later, I can tell you, I am certain that I found that in him, and to his embarrassment in this, which is, I do believe that when people someday look back and look at which chapters of my career or which acts of my career, what successes did I have, the best ones and the most successful ones, the most important and impactful act is going to be the one I'm in right now with him, literally. We will do more good for the world. We will have success, depending on whether it's fortune or fame, however you want to measure it, in it, that I think will outdo everything that I've done to date. And I'm saying with, I hope a bit of humility, that humbleness, that I understand Lion King and Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and Dragons and all of these things, and Beauty and the Beast and, all of those. As proud as I might be of those, I think the best is in front of me, literally. And that this partnership is why.
And so you guys are 9 years in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how has it evolved? Like, what was the original vision, and maybe give us a snapshot to where it is today?
Yeah. So where we started was this idea that we'll create 1 or 2 companies a year. And so I think we've created 10 or 11, 8 in tech, 2 or 3 in digital media. Digital media has been a challenging field. We can talk about that. But the 8 in tech, I mean, a couple of them are recent, but this year, I think we'll do about close to 1.1 billion of revenue and 200 million of EBITDA. And, we own at this point, after some dilution, between 28 and 80%.
And all those pure incubation, not
incubations, but we'll do like acquisitions of products.
Got it.
We'll
Take private
we did a take private of one business that was in a challenging situation and did a whole bunch of crazy stuff with it. Yeah, so it's become like a pretty interesting portfolio. I mean, I think if you were to aggregate how much capital we've put in for that ownership position in those businesses, I think we've put maybe $300 million.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's looking pretty good at the moment.
And who do you guys emulate? Like, if we were to say,
well, I think you'd have to go back and look at the Founders Fund and Peter Thiel and those guys. They did this in their own way years ago.
Sure.
Which they built companies, and they also invested in companies. And because we've both been in the field of creating and building, and that has a great fun and satisfaction for us, but also finding other great founders and and betting on them is also equally interesting to
Yep.
us. And so we are this sort of unique blend of those two things, and they're very complementary. Yes.
We added that later.
Yeah.
So the way we got into venture, because we originally weren't planning to do
Yeah.
venture.
We were a
And
holding company when we
yeah,
started.
That's what I
it's a
thought
whole
you were going to say
Yeah.
Diller, right? You know,
No.
Well, it's like if you think about it, it's like who did we study and admire? It's obviously IAC,
Buffett.
LVMH, Buffett less so because we're really we're
Got it. You
super
wanna be a-
operationally
got
involved. I mean, obviously he's the GOAT, but
Sure.
But in terms of
Constellation.
Constellation, although they're less operationally involved, but we admired how they
Yeah.
kind
They
of
have
figured out
best
value
practices
creation. Exactly.
and all that stuff.
Exactly. But it's like we really studied the hands-on holding companies for that side of it. The big difference that we brought, kind of maybe a more venture lens, it's hard to know from the outside of these things, is we really partner with someone that is like the founder CEO on each of these things.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like founder chairman sort of thing, and they're the founder CEO, and we're like, behind them and partner. I mean, talk every day kind of thing, but it's not. There have been periods where we've been like directly running the businesses, but we try to scale. You have to get people, work with people who are amazing.
And I would say the way we try to frame it, particularly for the ones that we are doing more venture investing in, is say to them, treat us as an extension of your C-suite. How can we help you? I know everybody says that all the time in this. There isn't a venture firm that doesn't say that. We try and do things that I think are unique to us, either by the relationships that we have, the access that we have. In my case, we talk about this all the time. Storytelling is literally fundamental to every business. There is not a business that exists that there isn't storytelling at the foundation and the core of it. So whether it is the moment in time in which a founder has an idea, he needs to be able to explain that idea, or she, to other people that they want to come work with them. They have to be able to explain that idea to go out and raise capital. You have to have that idea in order to find your go-to-market, to find your sales, to talk to your consumer. Storytelling is literally at the core of business building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one place where those 45 years of experience actually have direct application to doing this. And so sitting with a founder and actually going through their sales deck with them and helping them frame it, perfect it, and get it into, that just rock solid, you're going to tell your story in 18 minutes on a Zoom and be able to answer questions and be done at 29 minutes. It's an art and a science.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are lots of people that can give you the science of how to put a great storytelling, sales deck together. The art side of it, it's a nuance.
And what percentage of, I guess, the investments, like of that 300 million capital in of those first, like how many of them wouldn't exist otherwise, either because the IP or it was a pure incubation?
None.
Yeah. So that's 300 million. And then the balance of dollars deployed.
Yeah. So basically the way to think about it is inside of the holding company, it ended up, it's probably 60% on the build side and 40% on venture and venture adjacent things.
Yep.
And then we raised a regular traditional GPLP fund 2 or 3 years ago. And that's more 55 venture, 45 builds.
Got it.
And I think that's, again, I think in a traditional GPLP fund, you got to have a little more diversification.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a holding company, you can be pretty concentrated, take big swings. You get a lot of white hair from that process, but it also means you're committed to making these things work.
Sure.
Come hell or high water.
And so how much time is spent? Like, I realize it changes.
So we just don't
by the
do
day.
that many deals. So
Yeah,
that's our biggest constraint. So time is So here's actually the crazy thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeffrey describes storytelling on sales decks and stuff. He will then sit down and do hundreds of sales calls with these founders. Like I actually really would love to understand at some point why you do that. Like I've never quite figured out what motivates someone who created it. I mean,
So I have a bottomless need to sell.
Yeah.
So give me something that I believe in, just let me loose.
Yeah.
And so, we find these, for me, if I understand the application and why a product is going to make a company more successful, save them money, give them a better trajectory on this, that I know I'm doing something that's going to help, I am a bulldog, right? Like I will drive through any wall to get them to actually try the product and allow them to see it for themselves. So we don't do it with that many, but when we do, I'll literally do 100 sales calls with the CEO, with the founder, to walk in the door together and, get to the right person. That's the other thing that I think I bring, because if you take the 10 ideas that have created all of the value of WndrCo in our 9 years, he's 10 for 10. They're all his. Seriously. Like, you don't have to be, modest about it. They are. What I'm able to do is to accelerate and bring, I think, a level of access and resources and things to it that just make the partnership so powerful. I can't do what he does.
Well, just to be clear, so the way I think of the partnership is working. So it's 2 of us, and then we have 4 other partners.
Okay. And is that the full team, or there's
no? And then we've got like 6 or 7 associates.
Got it.
And we think of the group of partners kind of like a management team. Jeffrey's being modest. I mean, he's the magic. The truth is, without Jeffrey, we're just a bunch of people with reasonable resumes. But there's, like, as you know, 500,000 people like us. There's one person like him in this world, in my opinion. So that's magic, and that's like, how do you potentially super accelerate or amplify a project that we're involved in? Chen-Li Wang, who's been with us since the beginning, is like our chief product officer. Chen-Li, he was, your classic Terman Scholar computer scientist from Stanford, did Goldman, TMT banking, went to NEA. He was like one of the 2 rock star.
Do you guys overlap there?
Yeah, that's how we knew each other. And Scott Sandell, who now runs NEA, he and I had done an investment in Workday back then. Chen-Li left to go to Workday. When I went to Dropbox, I called, he was literally the first phone call. I was walking out of talking to Drew, and I walked down, I called Chen-Li. I'm like, hey, I need you to come do this thing. And the joke at NEA was, Sujay must have realized real work has to be done. It's like that kind of thing. And Chen-Li's like, actually, my favorite Chen-Li story, Joe Lonsdale told me this one. So at Clarium, at Peter's hedge fund, they used to administer some sort of IQ test equivalent to every candidate who was applying for a job. And Joe told me that Chen-Li scored the highest of anyone who ever took that test. So he's like an off the charts kind of guy. If you spend time with him, you will just, he's a great guy. So Chen-Li's kind of like our chief product officer.
But doing investments as well?
Yeah, for sure. And he's an awesome venture guy as well. But like when we're doing a build, I'm talking about the build, like when we're building a company, or if one of the venture portfolio companies needs help on product and engineering, Chen-Li goes deep in that. He ultimately ran the core product engineering team at Dropbox. So like what Dropbox was, the core product, and growth, monetization, data science, analytics, all of that was Chen-Li's. And then Jeff Niken, who runs our New York office, he's a college buddy of mine, was kind of like the smartest guy at Princeton when we were there. He actually came from the hedge fund world. So he was a managing director at one of the early Tiger Cubs, Shumway Capital, which became a $10 billion public hedge fund. He then started with all the Shumway partners, another one called Cybermill. So he's a super analytical stock picker person, but because he had started Cybermill, he understood the entrepreneurial journey, which is so different than just picking stocks. Like it's you can intellectualize it, but unless you've gone through the process of like putting those like initial documents together, like trying to build an office like you're doing right now, raising money, getting people to believe in you, convincing people to quit their jobs to come join this crazy mission you're on. It's just unexplainable to people. It's a very unique process. And so he had gone through that on the finance side. He now runs our New York office. He's kind of like, he's all of our fintech, all that kind of stuff is what he covers, but he's also effectively like a CFO kind of figure for a lot of these companies. And then we've got another person who's pure magic named Anthony Solly. I don't know if you come across Anthony, you would love him. Anthony has been a great seed investor now for 14 years. He invested in Dropbox in the early days. He did seed or Series A and Coinbase, Coupang, Robinhood. I mean, a crazy roster. The way he got into it is fascinating. He was an undergrad in college in New York, working kind of as part of the extended team that was supporting Nas. And one day, Nas fires his entire team except for Anthony. And Anthony, as a junior in college or something,
20 years old,
becomes Nas's manager.
What year is this?
This is 2008 or something.
Okay.
2007, 2008.
Okay. Now you remember in that 2007, 2008, Nas is literally the biggest
Oh yeah.
he's-
rap artist.
yeah,
in
he
the
Pop
did-
is
world.
Dead or
yeah.
whatever that album.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he's like
Yeah, yeah.
Illmatic. I mean, these guys are he's like incredible, right? And so, like, true historical icon in music. And Anthony basically built this music management. Actually, he has Kendrick Lamar now.
Hmm.
So that's he. I mean, he's the coolest person in tech.
Right, but he works full time with you guys.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he has this
That's a
music management company
that he oversees.
that he
Got
oversees,
it.
but he works,
Yeah, it's
closely.
cool.
Like he
Yeah.
Super Bowl halftime show, all that stuff, right? But he runs our seed fund. And Anthony, the way he got into the seed investing business was he read that Ben Horowitz likes rap music.
Yeah.
And he cold emails him and says, hey, we're thinking about maybe, and this is 2009, we're thinking about maybe, Nas and I are thinking about maybe investing in some tech companies. Would you be willing to like teach us something? And Ben replies, like, according to Anthony, in like 2 minutes saying, do you want to have dinner tonight?
That's so funny.
and I met Anthony through Ben when we were doing some Dropbox stuff. And so Anthony he's like literally the guy. I mean, Jeffrey loves to say this. Chenley has more IQ than anyone else in the shop, and Anthony has more EQ than anyone else in the shop.
Interesting.
Well, I actually say he has more IQ than all of the rest of us added up. And Anthony has more EQ than
I
the
don't
rest
like
of
to
us.
admit that, but
Yeah. You'll give the IQ thing away.
Yeah. So they're. I mean, anyways, Anthony's magic. They're both magic. And then we just promoted a sixth partner who started with us in our first associate crop in 2017, Justin Wexler, and Justin. He kind of did the old school venture associate route, went to business school, came back. The thing we loved about Justin is he is a dog with a bone. He's like Jeffrey. If he decides he needs to help a company sell something, or if he wants to go track down something or meet some executive, he is relentless. And he's the kind of guy that we said, you know what, we have to bet on this person because he is, he doesn't have the same track records as everybody else yet. But boy, if someone's going to have it that we know close, that we're close to, it's going to be this guy.
So 6 of you at the
Six of us at the partner level.
And how many investments a year?
5 to 6 venture, 1 build.
1 build. And that how much money will it be in a given year generally?
I don't know. I mean,
Depends.
it all depends how much we can raise. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Like call it 150 a year.
Okay, 150 a year.
200 a year, something like that. Yeah.
And so what makes a company that you guys are looking for, and how do you actually make the decisions? Is it consensus? Is it silver bullet, different people, or is it tug of war?
Depends on if we're building something or if we're venture.
You know what? It's such a compatible group.
Yeah.
And the process is just so strong. It is one of those things where everybody has such high regard for one another that you want to know what Anthony thinks.
Yeah.
You want to know what Chen Li thinks. You want to know what Niken thinks. Like, you want those voices at the table strong, and you encourage them to speak their mind always, So I wouldn't say that it is, vote consensus. It's sentiment consensus, right? If somebody violently thinks, oh my God, this is a mistake, but we've never had it.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, we're not right all the time, obviously. We're wrong. I wish we were. I think the process is very much, I mean, it's kind of like we're all doing the same thing, right? You're trying to build as prepared a mind as possible. That prepared mind process comes from fundamental research, market mapping, playing with every available new innovation you can, but also just talking to the smartest people in the network, collaborating with other people. We're very collaborative. We're not in the, this is our ball. We're trying to grab all of it.
But it sounds like you guys err on the side of like consensus rather than, hey, other groups will be a little bit more IC oriented, where someone gets like a silver bullet, or they take feedback from the partnership, but then ultimately it's their decision if they really want to push it through. It's sort of like,
we've never worked that
Yeah,
way.
you guys are
more like a management team.
Yeah. And I guess it sounds like a lot of this group has been together for a long time.
Anthony's been there since the beginning. Actually, Anthony was one of the people that connected us in the beginning.
So Anthony's one of my son's closest friends.
Oh, is that right?
That's how-
Okay.
yeah.
So there's implicit kind of trust in the group, and
We've been through plenty of ups and downs now.
yeah,
and we stuck it out. It's like so much of this industry is about grinding through the hard times and capitalizing on the good times, and then grinding through more hard times.
Totally.
And then
well, there's like 2 different models.
So, but I would just say, Logan, for me, the test of partnership is really how much do you look forward to being together,
For sure.
literally. And I just have to say, in the case of every one of our partners, I'm happy when I'm with them. One of them, all of them, I literally, they are, they're wind beneath my wings. Like, I just feel like I'm excited, challenged. And when somebody take family out of the equation, if you have a handful of these in your life, you're very lucky in this, is when somebody walks in the door, like, a great friend or a partner or a colleague, and you're just like happy to see them. I feel that way about our 5 partners.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be with them in it. And out of that, you only find, you find things to succeed together at, it's not about taking down, it's about building up.
Yeah. Well, and I sort of think there's 2 different constructs, plus or minus, in the industry. There's sort of the cherry picked model, which a lot of venture firms will look to the outside more often than not and try to pull people in. I was at Battery for 6 years. Now I've been at Redpoint for 5.5. They were looking for someone and they pulled me in. Now my 2 partners have sort of grown up within the firm. But more or less, I think some firms kind of gravitate to looking to the outside and some firms gravitate to looking to the inside as they evolve over time. It sounds like initially from the ground up, you guys were opting into people that you wanted to work with, that you knew network wise, that you knew from.
Well, we didn't. I mean, we bet for, that was, you go back to 9 years ago, the gamble, particularly on the people who gave us capital, was most partnerships don't work.
Yeah.
You guys get along.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like literally, we couldn't be more different.
Did you guys do trust falls and stuff to like we were ropes course? Like, how did you guys get the?
No, we just jumped off a bridge and stuff.
But I mean,
it's Butch and Sundance.
Yeah. How'd you?
It'll be okay.
It sounds like you guys talked every day though, and just sort of built the trust over time. Had enough commonalities.
You never know until you go through really hard times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good times
when
are easy.
things are like, should we shut this thing down?
Yeah.
That's when you know whether you want to be partners with somebody.
Yeah.
And, Chenley and I had it, and the way Anthony and I had it, because we had, several years together. Jeff joined in 2020 or 2021. But I knew from knowing him for so long that it would be likely to work, but you never know. But, the thing that was the big risk, as Jeffrey said, was whether he and I would really have, and it's been, he's like, I don't want to comment on his age, but he's like a second dad for me.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Well, and that's what LPs will really validate too, especially with emerging managers. Like, when they're underwriting to a first fund or whatever, it's like, we're underwriting the risk that the partnership blows up. And a lot of them do, by the way.
Most. By the way, in
sure.
life.
Life.
I mean, as I said, you go back and I could have gone on with the analogy about partnership and just say, I just had my 50th wedding anniversary in Hollywood.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, not too many of those.
Well, I think I'm a true unicorn.
I was going to say, those get measured in dog years.
Billion.
Yeah.
And so I think about partnership. I think about friendship. These are things that are just so foundational. And I think about how, character. And so one of the things that I love about Sujay, and it's so interesting because to find these 2 qualities in one person is in itself a unicorn. It's a contradiction, which is, in order to be a great investor, for the most part of my career, a picker, you have to be able to do these 2 things. One, you actually have to be able to see a dream. Somebody tells you an idea, right? And if you're not a dreamer also, it's not going to be possible for you to actually, for a moment, put yourself in their shoes and see their dream and understand what that might be if it actually, realized itself in it. On the other hand, most dreams don't come true. And you need to be skeptical and cynical. So think of the contradiction of being able to see a dream and also being able to be skeptical and cynical at the same time, because it's about filtering through, what are the best of those in this. And the thing that is we laugh about, because, a day in the life of Sujay is, I love this idea. It's the greatest thing I've ever heard. This is a stupid idea. We should not be doing this.
Are those the same idea?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple times a day.
Totally.
But his process of how he sorts through that, and he's actually quite verbal about it.
Yeah.
So he's the one day is like, okay, well, the world's blown up, sky's falling, and we are dead meat.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That might be today.
You know what? The sky might be falling, but it's going to be good news for us.
Yeah.
So
you're like, Sujay, lie horizontal on the couch. Yeah.
If you talk to my wife or any of those people at Dropbox who work for me, I mean, I think they're described as schizophrenia.
Yeah, we can laugh about it, but the medicinal stuff and all that. I guess I'm curious. You referenced earlier, obviously, great partnership wife, 50+ years, Eisner, Diller, all the different people that you've worked with over the years as well. What do you think? Maybe what's counterintuitive about making a partnership work, or what's something that's non-obvious, not trust and some of those things that maybe are, of course.
Well, I can tell you about marriage. I'll start with that one, because that's actually the simplest one in a way. And so I am asked all the time, is there a secret to, 50 years?
You're like skipping the after party or something?
No, it's actually simpler than that. It's just 2 words. But yeah, it's yes, dear.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Okay, so that's marriage.
And the
that
rest
doesn't
of
work
life,
with Sujay.
And the rest in life, I would just say to you, fundamental to partnership, any and all partnerships, is you must be more of a giver than a taker. And I actually think that's true in life. I think the greatest satisfactions and rewards come if you can actually find more satisfaction from giving than taking. And we could go take that analogy, throw that equation through almost anything in this. I just in everything try to be, and I don't succeed at it all the time. I try to be generous. And by the way, I can't say that I had those attributes earlier in my career when I was fighting to get to the top of the Mount Everest and, along the way. And I'm sure people would say that, I played hardball and was, bare knuckles and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure that's perceived to be true on the other side of it, and probably was true to some degree. I don't think you win in that world without, getting into some knife fights along the way. But over time, I really came to appreciate and understand the rewards of giving, but in business, in credit, in philanthropy, most rewarding thing in the world to be able is to help somebody else.
What surprised you about moving into tech, like directly Silicon Valley? Obviously, you were exposed to tech and all the stuff you did before.
The cultures are antithetical to one another. They could not be
cutthroat
more
versus
different.
collaborative.
I don't think it's that. I just think that the one is very introspective, and the other is sort of much more externalized in it. And so there's a way more social networking, cultural networking, knowledge. Like it's they really are just so very different. The work ethic and, the heads down, founders in tech are, they're unique, they're impressive. And so there's just a different dynamic there than I think exists. The cultures of the 2 worlds are really quite different.
Presumably you gotten exposed to some of the stuff in all of this world. I know you guys, I've heard you guys do a wonderful conference for founders and as well. I think that brings in different media folks or Hollywood folks. What's been interesting to get exposure to that world, like that I guess you think maybe within our industry we could have a little bit more of? You can say nothing too.
Well, I'm not really thought about it in the sense of like what we could do better, but I do think the thing we sometimes underappreciate in tech is the value of beautiful things. Like, one of the most interesting things to me about people from, call it Southern California, but
Sure.
the world of media, is that they are very tasteful. And there's just, they sort of elevate environments that they're in. And there's a magnetism to them as people in terms of what they say, how they communicate. And I think, we're all nerdy folks up here, in our world, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, I think obviously you do a great job with this as a platform, but in general, our crew is like very, as Jeffrey said, internally focused. And we tend to talk to each other, we hang out with each other, we'll go hiking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But these folks are influencing people at a human level, not impersonally, and I think it's pretty interesting.
I think the people in the media and entertainment are more vulnerable, and so the emotional aspects of them, good and bad, are much more extreme. So on one hand, that there's enormous empathy out of many of them, and out of that comes philanthropy and doing social good, and they become activists and stuff. And on the other side is sort of outsized egos, very, very, very needy, very super needy, and super insecure, much more so than you experience in Silicon Valley. And so it's just, as I said, it's just they are different.
Yeah.
No question about it. And they love being like the people from, one of the things we have tried to do is to bring those worlds together. And what's fantastic about it is that when the media, entertainment, movie, TV, sports, music people get to be with, tech founders, CEOs, they love it. And they don't get asked very often, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of the things we've done is that we've brought these worlds together, all three of which appreciate one another more than they recognize until they're there.
Yeah.
And then they light up and they go, wow, these are really interesting people. All sides.
It's funny, but as you were saying it, this kind of light bulb popped in my head, which is what I think the reason that insecurity might be there more on a human level is, let's say one of us starts a company, we build a product and nobody wants to use it. You take that very personally. Like, this is your work. For a lot of these folks who are in the entertainment world, if people reject their product, that's them.
Yes.
They're rejecting them as human. I mean, in a sense, they're rejecting my humanity.
That's the way I feel,
right?
like about a buddy who's a comedian, and it's like, I can go assess his job on a Friday night. I can go to the comedy club and look how he's doing and be like, yeah, no, not great. Didn't find it that funny. No one really gets to do that for me.
No.
They don't really know when we got in and what valuation and how the company's doing and all that.
But even if one of them doesn't go well, you got a portfolio. It's not you personally.
And it's not me as a human. It's like, hey, you maybe made a bad decision.
Your decision.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which is a different thing.
But here's the thing, which is, failing has a stigma in movies, TV, sports, and music that is, as Sujay says, is quite personal. And so particularly in the culture and the world that we live in, you go up and you go down, and they are severe. And
ephemerality
and I've watched it so many times with so many people over so many decades. Whereas in Silicon Valley, if you took a great shot and it didn't work, great, start again, right? Like, failure doesn't have the same stigma in this. Even to the Quibi, the one truly, big swing and a miss, that I took in the media space in Silicon Valley, it was like, wow, it was a huge idea. It was a real genuine moonshot, and, you can't hit a home run if you don't swing for the fences, right? And this was a swing for the fences. And people in Silicon Valley were like, okay, it's too bad it didn't work, but it's not because it wasn't a great idea and that you put your heart and soul into it. And then, by the way, when it wasn't working, you shut it down and gave people as much money back as you could. In Hollywood, it's a black eye. It never goes away, literally. And unfortunately, I don't care. But literally, Sujay will tell you, it's 5 years later, and there's just simply never anything that's written about me. At some point, you were going to get to Quibi.
I figured you guys that there's enough forums of
I don't care.
answering
it's
that
like
question.
Listen, I have been given way either so much or too much credit for all the successes that I have had in my career, more than I deserve. I'm okay owning my failures.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there are way fewer of them than there are the other. And so you can't have it one way. You got to take both.
Yeah.
If you're going to own your success, then you got to own your failure in this. And so I wished it had worked. But I'm certainly proud of the shot that we took.
What has you guys excited these days?
I mean, obviously, all the stuff we're all collect. I mean,
AI
we all
has
know
just
that.
changed
Yeah,
the
so we all
world.
know that it's a platform change. The first meaningful one, and the reason 2008, 2010, 12 were such great years for our industry was you had, social media, you had the cloud, you had mobile devices, and so it enabled all this amazing, product development that solved big problems for people at home or at work, right? And then we've all been kind of waiting.
Yeah.
For like 15 years, we've been
It was
waiting.
basically AWS and the App Store kind of launched around 07.
Well, and marketing on social media.
And marketing on social media.
Customer acquisition on social media, right?
Yes.
So those three things like fundamentally changed literally everything.
Yeah.
And so you could build businesses doing anything and do something magical.
Yeah. And so we got the Datadogs and the CrowdStrikes, and we got the ByteDances and the Instagrams and the WhatsApps and the Ubers
and so many, right?
Yeah.
Like, and all the enterprise business. I mean, it's just crazy what we
feels
got.
like this is that time again. And again, maybe there's too much hype, maybe the bubble's too big, but this one is for real.
Yeah.
Like you can see literally transformational, not evolution, revolution out of the power of, of supercomputing and AI and these I mean, it is a change the world moment. And we're seeing things that are exciting. No question right now, it's a bit too frothy.
Feels
like it's just gotten ahead of itself a bit, but that's not to say it isn't a sea change.
Yeah.
It is.
The internet got ahead of itself, and we still had Google and eBay and
Amazon
Facebook and
all
Amazon
these things happened.
and,
So my guess is net, it was still like an outstanding. Even if you indexed 1995 to 2000, as much as like the commentators like to make fun of the excess, I bet you still did great.
Yeah.
Interesting. If you indexed it.
If you indexed it. And that's the interesting thing is you sort of had to get into
everything.
The 8 names that really mattered that powered through, and some of them actually came later. If you look, I mean, Facebook came a little bit later, Google came a little bit later. So yeah, it's interesting. But I guess
Google was 98, 99.
99, but 99. Yeah, but I guess it was on the later part of the internet wave. Like I guess if you were at a time base, if you were to index against Netscape and ChatGPT, Google probably hasn't been founded. I think it was Netscape was 92, 93, and Google was
maybe 95.
Yeah. And so
94, 95.
So I think we're around the time of if ChatGPT is the Netscape moment, we're probably around the time of Google getting started, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, I just think it's going to happen. I just think distribution is so much more compressed
There's
now.
an acceleration of
that
all
there's
that
an
stuff.
acceleration.
Yeah.
I think, again, we're just going to see the human creativity is being unleashed in these kind of new ways. I think we'll find out. We like to remind everyone internally over and over again that at the end, and we've been doing this since the beginning, but like at the end of the day, there's probably around the world 5 to 15 $5 billion plus companies, ultimately $5 billion plus companies created every year.
Yeah.
And, in our typical portfolio, we're talking about 25 companies, 20, of which 5 are builds. So take those out. But of the 20, which is 3 years period, we got to get at least 1 or 2 a year. That's our job, is to get at least 1 or 2 of the 5 to 15 every year. And even in the middle of a bubble, I guarantee you there are going to be Googles created and things like that. And so in general, I think being cynical in our world about excess and bubbles is a silly, silly, silly game. I think on an
Sound smart.
On an individual, you can sound really smart being cynical,
Really
right? Like people who can put out negative, critical things about anything always sound smart.
And by the way, you're probably going to be far more.
You'll be right on a percentage basis.
But when you're wrong, to be really
in a power law business, it turns out it doesn't matter if you're wrong 99 times. It's that one time that makes all the difference. It's funny because I didn't realize you never get your money back in venture, and so from 2012 I started
allowed checks in.
Yeah. So
there's this carry thing.
Yeah. Well, no, and so even before, this is even worse than being on the venture side, because in 2011, I think I started a program where everyone at Dropbox could sell some percentage of their holdings. And so we had liquidity starting around then. And so, of course, I would start investing in all the venture funds. And so I invested in dozens and dozens and dozens of venture funds.
Probably good vintages, all things considered.
Phenomenal. Like, on paper, they should be amazing.
Yeah, better than 2020.
But then you fast forward and I'm still like, dude, when am I going to get my money? Give me my principal back at some point, kind of thing. It's been 15 years. But the funny thing is, when you look at the underlying portfolio companies,
amazing.
It's amazing, but it's still 1 out of 50.
Yeah.
And that one
out of 50 investments.
1 out of 50
funds,
investments in a fund will be amazing. And by the way, that 1 out of 50 is going to return, like, in some cases, 15, 20x on the fund. But boy, that's 49.
Totally.
You know?
A lot of losses.
That's what I always joke.
I don't know if I have like the mental fortitude to do like super early stage investing, because you have one company that goes really, really well. And then you mostly, there's a lot of cheerleading going on and like, keep doing more of this stuff. And of course you help, and I'm making it simple. And then there's a lot of shitty board meetings. And you know what? Like the proportionality of pain you feel, it's like that loss mitigation framework or whatever, that you feel pain 2 or 3 times, like worse than you feel success. It's an interesting thing. Yeah, I was actually
are you like that? Are you wired to, like, if you have something that loses money, does that hurt you more than the fun of the winners?
I've had to. It's been an interesting internalization. Battery was much more, I would say, growthy in nature, where it was like, let's make sure every investment has a good shot at a 3x, 4x, 5x in that range. And Red Point, what I've had to internalize is a lot more like swing for the fences. Hey, if we don't have a shot at a 10 to 15, 20x, like what are we doing?
Yeah.
And there's been I think if you go back and look, like my first couple of investments at Red Point, you could see I was trying to internalize both elements of it. When I go back and look at like, what I was thinking or reread the memo or all that, there was elements of both. And honestly, you need to pick one. Both can be great answers, but you kind of need to pick which side of the fence you're going to be on. I saw something recently that 1% of all exits drive, I think, like 50 to 55% of value in venture. And so it's
I'm surprised it's not even more than that.
It's 1% of exits, so that's not counting shutdowns
all the ones that don't work out,
and all the zeros.
Right.
So it's probably like 0.1% if you count all the things that you don't have any exits around, which makes sense. There's a power law, and it's even true at like later stages. I think any fund that generates like over 3x, I think 64% of their value comes from a single investment, something like that.
I mean, it's not surprising at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny when I think back on my personal investments, which again, I used to do a lot. Now everything is through WndrCo now, but my 2 best personal investments where I put in 2009, a third of my, at the time, net worth, which wasn't much, in Facebook secondary at $8 billion.
Wow.
And which is what allowed me to leave NEA to go to Dropbox.
Do you have any connection to the team, or was this
so Matt Kohler, who was one of the early execs, he was an analyst at McKinsey with me.
Oh, funny.
And he was my best friend.
Oh, wow.
At McKinsey.
For people that don't know, Kohler had
actually, want to hear a crazy one?
Kohler's had an amazing run. For people that don't know, he was LinkedIn.
He was the first employee at LinkedIn.
He was like Reid Hoffman's like EA turned chief of staff turned like first employee or something.
I don't know if that was quite. I mean, it wasn't exactly quite the path. I mean,
someone said.
No, so what happened?
I think the story I heard was, someone's going to correct me on this, but I think I heard the story was Reid was like, "Yeah, I'm not really hiring, but I need people to like, help me
put
schedule
and
put this thing together." And he was like, "Okay, I can do that too." So maybe it's an exaggeration of it.
Maybe there's some truth. It's not how I remember it from back then.
All these stories get mythologized or mythologized in some way over time.
And well, anyway, Matt's had one of the more extraordinary careers.
Totally.
And
so wait, but finish. So Facebook after that, then
and then SpaceX. So my buddy John Herring, who runs VY Capital with Alexander Tomas, started investing in SpaceX. There must be a second largest investor in SpaceX or something. And he put together like a group of friends to invest in SpaceX at $10 billion. And at the time it was like, hey, they're going to come up with the Starlink thing, and we're like, what are you talking about? Internet? Like, what? That's going to be the future of rockets.
Totally.
And then it's turned out that's incredible, obviously. And so, you look at it, and so when like some of our investors say, well, why are you guys doing some later stage stuff? Like we put a bunch of money in that last Figma round, which is, we think that's one of the great
it's incredible
building companies. In some, in Databricks, Ali's a really good friend of mine. And so we did a bunch of Databricks, and they're like, why are you doing that? And I said, well, look, we're just trying to figure out, can we get a 10 or 15x on something? And so if we think someone, even at a $10 billion valuation, is building something truly generational in a market which has its market, but also the adjacencies that they're going to get into, can justify a $100 billion company one day, which is what we, hope for Dylan and Figma, or, $500 billion company for Ali. Like, they're the kind of founders who can do it. And so we'll do that, which sounds, some folks, wonder about that, but that's how we think about it. And so we're more modeled on like the way you described how Redpoint is, which is we want things to be really big. We don't get many shots on goal, like 6 a year, 7 a year. And so we want them to potentially be huge. We also have a lot of confidence in the portfolio because we know that the builds are very safe. Like, those are things that we feel a high degree of confidence can deliver super solid returns for the whole portfolio, which means on the venture side, the juice in venture comes from us hopefully getting a couple of big ones.
And what do you think about like a Ali or Dylan in those situations? Obviously, the returns there. Is that just picking those things specifically from a focus and constraint standpoint? Is that when they show up and you think you have some connection to it and it just feels like this is a special founder and we believe in the opportunity? Or do you actively pursue those things of like chasing the people around and when can they take money?
I mean, so there's two different things here. One is that we both of us, but also the whole group, we've just been friends with a lot of these folks for a very long time.
Yep.
And so if you actually were to say, what's the biggest mistake in the history of WndrCo? The biggest mistake was that we didn't do venture from 2016 to 2020.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was that period where all of our Dropbox folks were becoming either founders or the top execs at all the next generation great, like literally every one of the next generation great companies.
You're like fighting with hands
and we're like,
behind
oh no, we don't invest in your kind of business. Why would we invest in this? And
Sujay's greatest regret, it's literally one of his closest friends is Ali Gotzi at Databricks, and he's had the chance to invest in him at 500 million.
Valuation was always too high.
At $1 billion, at 2 billion, at
which
5
is always
billion.
true,
Which is
by the
always
way.
true of the great ones, right? Like, and then and you look. I mean, if you mentioned the Dropbox crew earlier, I mean, you look at that crew, right? You look at the OpenAI management team, like that. I mean, a lot of them, like a huge percentage of them, worked at Dropbox. You look at Figma's management team. You look at literally every one of these companies. There are 1, 2, 3 people on the top. Out of the top 5 or 6.
I want to come back into the investing side of it, but I guess I'm curious because we're talking about Dropbox and that talent density. What do you think allowed that network to permeate? Because Dropbox was the company in what, 12 to 16, 17, something like that?
Yeah, pro 11 to 16.
11 to 16.
Late 11 to 16.
Yeah. 10 billion when was that round?
I think I raised that in 2014.
14.
And I did the 4 billion round in the fall, in August, September of 2011.
Okay. So that stretch of time when those numbers meant something. Now they don't.
It's funny how fast it changes, right?
Yeah, right now it's like 3 kids in a garage.
Jeffrey's like, that reminds me when I made Star Trek and Pretty Woman.
Totally.
He makes fun of me because I sometimes will reminisce about these days.
Yeah. So wait, so what do you think the talent density there? Was it just like a compounding thing?
There were a few things. One is that, so Drew started the company with Arash Ferdowsi.
Mm-hmm.
Arash was, and probably still to this day, is the most insightful person when it came to assessing talented people that we could collaborate well with. Like I don't know how exactly his brain, he was so talented at that. That was number one. Number two is we all put a ton of effort into recruiting super talented people. And we didn't care about experience because none of us had any.
Yeah. And was that like a top-down directive? Was that an innate thing that you guys just felt some moral or like business-oriented impetus to go pursue?
I don't know. We just liked working with really smart people.
Yeah.
And and people who, basically, if you were to say what were the 3 qualifications if you're simplifying it. So one is super talented, super smart. Number 2 was would work well with the culture. And number 3 were insanely hardworking. And I think I probably slept on the couch at least once or twice a week in that first couple of years. It was a nutty period. And then, as Jeffrey was talking about partnership and also, it's funny. So Drew is still to this day one of my best friends. We were so close. I mean, we officiated each other's weddings. We're he is one of the all-time great humans. He's a brilliant guy. And I think we just collectively really enjoyed having people of that talent level around us. And then the final piece of the equation is that obviously you have a little bit of luck in these things, or a lot of luck in these things. And so things were just firing, almost, a lot of the growth initiatives we would do would inflect the business over and over again. And when you have that and the business is growing so fast, recruiting someone super experienced from the outside to go, like a lot of times you'll just say, hey, talented person in X, go do this job. So all of these insanely talented young kids got jobs that they were not qualified for at all. And the ones that did a great job, like at least my management philosophy at the time was, if someone's doing a great job, make it bigger and bigger. And if someone's drowning, I don't have time to mentor them and coach them and all this sort of stuff. You just got to move on.
Yeah.
And so we were a little bit, we were super nice people, but we were a little bit ruthless in the sense that if you were great, you would just get bigger and bigger and bigger jobs. And if you weren't, it wasn't going to work out. And so what happened was you ended up filtering for people who had two things. One is that the people who were crushing it ended up getting bigger and bigger jobs, and then they got hired to do really big jobs by the next generation of companies. And number two is, like, as you know, what's that whole thing? A players hire A players and whatever. So they were so relentless at only hiring great people to work for them. And so then the generation below them were also super talented in the same thing. So it's kind of like we created a talent culture and a way for this talent not just to get brought into the company, but also to get jobs that allowed them to maximize their potential in that window, which then resulted in more talented people wanting to join. And so we just ended up hiring lots of great people that way.
Yeah. It's fascinating how all that stuff compounds and cascades on itself.
I mean, it's crazy. And then, of course, the final piece of why it all spread around is, we got stuck at 10 billion. And so if Dropbox had been a $500 billion company, everyone would have stayed. That's what happened to Google, right?
Yeah.
Like most of the people stayed. And so you didn't end up with that crazy Google diaspora. But why did PayPal have a diaspora? Well, they sold at 1.5 billion. Nobody was rich enough to just shut it down and move to St. Bart's.
Yeah.
Right. So at Dropbox, very few people got rich enough to never work again. But they were super talented. They had this amazing rocket ship experience, and the company had a reputation for having good people. So a lot of other companies wanted to hire out of that, talent pool. And so I think that's a big part of why it all kind of happened.
So going back to the investment side, so the AI thing, how do you guys pursue the different ideas that you're going after within AI? Is it kind of opportunistic when this stuff comes in, or are you doing like top down of what you think might make sense?
It's a combination of all the above.
Yeah,
kind of what we all do, right? Yeah. It's a combination of all of it. I mean, I think the AI stuff is the hardest because the valuations are where they're at.
Yeah.
You're making, but to the point you made about Databricks, like the best companies are always overvalued.
I will say, I was reflecting in 2022, the beginning when the market like totally pulled out, and I was looking at all these slides and graphs, and publics were down, it was trading at 6 times forward or something like across the board. And there were private rounds going down at 150, 200 times ARR. And I was like, all we say is internally we want to be in special companies and we don't get too wrapped around the axle on valuation. That's what we'll say.
It's hard to.
But at that moment in time, I like wanted to add a caveat to the rule of like, except once every like 5, 10, 20 years where this huge dispersion of valuations. And then at that point in time, we do care a little bit about it. And I was reflecting on, we spent time with 3 investments at that point in time. And all of them were just exorbitantly priced, especially compared to the public markets. And I actually think in retrospect, we probably should have done them all. They've all just sort of grown through, and it didn't really matter. Now, had we been wrong on whether or not they were special, it would have materially mattered. But
it would have mattered. But
to the tune of 1x.
You can lose 1x.
To the tune of 1x.
That's the thing that's so hard to explain. Like we get at, for some reason, when people spend time with you, talking about your business in our world, they spend a lot of time talking about why did that loser happen? Why did that loser happen? When instead, what I would do is spend all my time trying to figure out, for your outlier winners, was that dumb luck?
Yeah.
Or is that repeatable in some way?
Was there some replicable thing?
Yeah, exactly. Is there something that you did with that situation or those situations that will allow you to do that again in your next fund or your next fund? Spending time with the losers, it's like, what is the point of that?
Yeah. So within the AI thing, like, are there areas that you are particularly interested in? Like, does the media stuff come up, and is that intriguing? Or
it's getting intriguing. It wasn't early on because it was so clear that the rate of innovation is still so steep that whoever the winner is a year ago, not going to be the winner today or next year, and that they're going to get out innovated, by the next generation of it. It's only in these last couple of months that now we're starting to see some creative tools that are image generation, audio generation, visual generation, that are pretty compelling. And we've actually invested in one or two of them now that were pretty, they're early. So, but it's still, if you talk about traditional media in terms of, longer form, I think we're still, whether it's 6 months or a year or 18 months, 24 months too soon for that. The disruption is 100%. It's not even like a maybe here in it. It is a new set of tools and a new set of skill sets to, somebody had a great line, which is that it's not that AI is going to replace people. It's people who know how to apply AI are going to replace people who don't know how to apply AI. That's really where this is going to happen. And so in the world of, creativity, that person who understands how to create the best prompt is going to be invaluable.
Is that akin to some of the other technological transitions you've seen happen within movies and media at large, or is it different?
It's unique, but it's not. I mean,
there's
again,
analogies.
Well, I mean,
the hand-drawn animation.
Yes, I was going to say that there was 70 years of hand-drawn animation, and then John Lasseter comes along with this amazing short film that he made. That the thing that was Luxor, the lamp, and it was like oh my God, this is a new world.
And that hit you like a lightning bolt when you saw that.
Well, more like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
and so this, and by the way, it was exactly that at DreamWorks. Our first movie was a hand-drawn animated movie, one of the last, which was Prince of Egypt, and then came Ants and Shrek and were CG animation in this, and our entire workforce had to be transitioned. We had 1,500 employees, and a third of them were in non-creative, but business and support and tech and all of that. And that the other 1,000 there, half of them were able to learn a new skill set, which is how do you animate with a computer versus animate with a pencil on paper. And that some of them adapted incredibly well, and half of them were not able to. And so new set. So it's very, very, very disruptive. I mean, painfully so. But that if we hadn't done it, we would have been out of business.
Was there comparable resistance to that transition that you're seeing
Absolutely.
sort of today?
Yeah. Oh, no question. Culturally, very, very, very difficult to navigate through it and to come through the other side with lots of, loss and insecurity and, relationships and friendships. And, these people were like family. And so for those artists who were not able to, grasp onto the new thing, that wanted to hold on to the old tradition, they got left behind.
I hadn't really thought of this analogy. I mean, I think a lot of the immediate job disruption transition, at least in the knowledge work era, as I think about it, a lot of those things maybe were kind of post mainframe, a little bit post PC, that a lot of the stuff that was done by hand started to move to the computer a little bit. So maybe there aren't as many recent lessons in B2B that I can think of just like pure near-term disruption that have happened. So I'm curious, in managing that, communicating that, are there things that you would either do exactly the same as you did do or do totally different that you would maybe say to someone that is thinking through how to leverage these tools and how to deal with the human element of the transition?
Yes, I would be 10x more aggressive about embracing change as opposed to fearing change. Change is inevitable. I mean, it's, again, other people have said this, we went through an agricultural revolution, an industrial revolution, and now we're in the intelligence revolution. And if you do not understand, it is a revolution. It is going to, 200 years ago, 98% of the population was in agriculture. Yeah. Today's 2%. I mean, and it's no less important. Agriculture is still fundamental to human survival and existence in this, but people have moved on, and there are ways in which you can get redeployed here and this. And so, I think embracing that change, understanding it, trying to stand in front of it, put your hand up and say, I'm going to slow you down. I'm going to hold on to it. I wished I had gone faster. Not, I mean, there was a point, honestly, where the company was in risk and we were in genuine jeopardy, holding on, white knuckled on the cliff, and then Shrek arrived and it saved the company. And that is that moment, by the way, of, making that full transformation. I made a half version of it, right? I was trying to hold on to, the tradition, because I love the connection between an artist and a pencil onto a piece of paper. There's just something so organic and authentic about that kind of creation. And, it was an emotional thing in it, and I had been passed the mantle of this amazing Walt Disney, right? And I was trying to carry that tradition on and to protect it, and make sure that it prospered and all of that in it. And so, trying to keep one foot in each world at the same time, it was tough. On the other hand, go back, and I was instantly brought. And embraced using computer animation to support hand animation. So I remind everybody the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast. There's all that computer work of that amazing dance sequence, and it was not possible other than us embracing, state-of-the-art technology there. Or the wildebeest, stampede in Lion King. Those things were not possible 2 years, 3 years before in it. So again, just, that tug and pull.
Yeah. The enabling technology always seems, at least psychologically, it's an easier.
Right. But computer animation, CG animation, what John Lasseter did wasn't evolutionary. It was revolutionary in this. And that's how I sort of differentiate here. And I believe AI is revolutionary, not evolutionary. And so to embrace it and to know it and to understand it and to, try and, harness it to make you better, to make you smarter, to make you more effective and more productive, and is I think, invaluable. No matter what job you have, no matter what you're doing, if you can find a way to, all of us, I don't know about you, but there's not a day in which now I am not on every one of these platforms, and they are just making me just honestly smarter and more efficient. And it blows my mind how much more effective I am on ChatGPT and on Perplexity and on Grok and Gemini. And like I always believe that you can actually tell almost everything about a person if you look at the front page of their apps, right? Like that, if you actually went into that and did an analysis of like, well, explain each one of these and understand why it's there versus all this other there. Like, why is that? What is on that front page? And so here's on mine. Perplexity, Grok, Gemini,
You got them all.
ChatGPT, with WhatsApp, Slack, and Google. Right?
That's a little more extreme than I am.
Me too, actually.
I think I might have 2 on my home screen. I don't think I have 5.
And each one has something, by the way, just to give them all interesting in that. And Llama, by the way, also, every one of them has things about them that are unique and that are invaluable in this. And so I'm trying to learn every day.
Yeah.
Every day is, just like something new is coming along here in this, and it's just wild. Wild.
So as you think about, like, are your incubations in this field yet, or are they mostly?
We've done one. The problem that we have in AI from an incubation standpoint is we're not the smartest people in the world at it. Like, for us to do something that's a build, it means we have to think that we're the most qualified people to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And-
we're in dog grooming.
Yeah. So we've got, we've got
AI isn't going to touch
Yeah.
dog grooming.
Well, consumer cybersecurity was our big run.
Yes.
That was
And that is
where, I mean, frankly, I'm really proud of the stuff we've done
Yeah,
there.
maybe
It's
speak
pretty
to
cool.
that.
Well, so Aura, AURA. So this guy Hari Ravichandran. Have you ever had Hari on?
No, I haven't, but I know the business from the outside
Okay.
in, and I remember I was first exposed to it because they're the Timberwolves sponsor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so I was like, every time I see a random, I'm watching a basketball game and I see a new sponsor, I'm always like curious. I'm like, what is that? And
Why does this company have so much money to waste?
I know. I'm like either I need to learn what this business is, or I don't need to learn what this
Right,
business is,
exactly.
and I'll figure out.
Yeah.
Either way, I should figure out which
Usually
one.
the latter, but fortunately, in this
Yeah.
case, I think the former. But
Yeah.
so we're a couple $100 million of ARR now. Hari is I mean, he's our other partner, even though he's not our partner at WndrCo. He is unbelievable. He is one of the rare people who is super deep in business and also super technical. Those are like the most special entrepreneurs, are the ones who can learn both sides of this thing. And what we originally set out to do, which was an idea he had and an idea we independently had, and then Trevor Olshig from General Catalyst put us together because he's like, you guys are both trying to do the same thing. You should meet each other. And which was that this is 2018 and 19. At that time, every week you'd open the newspaper or go on whatever, wallstreetjournal.com or whatever it was. And it would be X corporation got hacked, 80 million social security numbers are breached, or grandmother took a spam call and gave away her bank account information, or this creep was found compiling like social media profiles on the dark web, or someone reused their password. I'm going to go on and on and on and on, right? And it was like, okay, I guess the little trade we've all made is for all the joy of being on the internet, one day we're going to lose all of our financials, all of our money. And that's just kind of the price of being online.
Yeah.
Is that we're going to get breached or hacked or what have you. And we kind of had this aha moment where like, that's insane. That is like an insane trade. Why has the world gotten to this place? And we say this jokingly, we have a lot of friends in private equity, but we like to joke that, a good target for us is when an industry has gotten private equity-ified.
Yeah.
Because it basically means the companies tend to go into cash flow mode, right? And one of the easiest ways to generate a lot of cash flow is to kill all long-term R&D.
Yeah.
If the R&D is going to pay out 7 years from now, why would a 3 to 5 year old owner invest in a 7-year payout like EBITDA killer? They wouldn't, right? And so, and even if they would, engineers don't really believe that, and so they all bail anyways. And so I think what happened is, by and large, the entire series of companies that were set up to protect all of us online, starting at the antivirus companies and everything else, just stopped innovating. You cannot think of a new product out of the old AV companies in like 2 decades.
Yeah.
And they were all desktop, and they were mostly antiviral.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but you can't think of any innovation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's nuts. And so we said, okay, well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You basically have incumbents that aren't innovating. You've got like a group of threats that are, of course, innovating, and somebody should go do something about this.
Their founders have murdered more people than
Right.
they ship new products.
Right. By the way,
I say that kind of tongue in cheek.
solely half tongue in cheek,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, then of course the logical thing for us is like, okay, well, let's go meet all the startups doing this. And what we realized is the problem is the surface area is so big, you've got to protect people in all these different ways that unless you're, there was a group of point solutions that were big enough that you could build independent companies, like 1Password, phenomenal business that we're investors in, and NordVPN's an amazing job in desktop VPN. But there's a very small number of these kind of point solutions that could be big enough to become their own companies. Most of them were just sitting in like early adopter land. And so then we kind of had like an outsider's style idea, which is like, all right, well, what if we put all these together and built a suite?
And what is all these together?
Like everything from identity protection.
Identity protection is password management, or it's...
No, identity protection is actually like monitoring your identity online. And
my
like
social security is on dark
financial
web.
information, like all that sort of stuff. All the way through to VPN and AV and all this password management, all this sort of stuff. But then, and that was where the business got going. And that, Jeffrey referenced that we had bought a public company. We actually bought a public company in the identity protection space.
How big of a business was that?
That was, I think valuation was like, it was trading at like 50 million. It was like kind of a dying public company.
We're doing
identity protection.
Doing about that in revenue or
no. So here's the crazy thing about it. they would basically, it was kind of like a LifeLock style product that their go-to-market was the big banks would sell it to their customers. So Bank of America or Citigroup or whatever would sell this identity protection to their customers. I don't remember if it was white labeled or not, but I think it might have been. And they grew really fast in like the 2000s doing that. And then the CFPB passed some regulation in 2011. I don't remember exactly what it was. That basically all the big banks said, we're done with third-party products. There's too much risk. It's not worth it. We're done selling through. So this public company, which was kind of been a bit of a rocket ship, went into like this melting iceberg phase.
Do you know what peak valuation was for him?
I don't remember. My guess is probably 500 million to $1 billion. It wasn't like a giant. But it got to 400 million of revenue, I think, at the peak in 2011, 2012.
Yep.
And then when we saw it, it was at 140 million. And this is actually a case study of an associate doing a great job. So we were in this space. We were looking for more things to do in this space. One of our associates, this kid, Tom Cooley, who's now a partner at Sequoia, Tom, came to me with this thingy. He was like, look, we should be really thinking about buying this thing. It's like 140 million of revenue at that point in time. It's shrinking really fast.
Yeah.
But the stock market hates shrinking public companies with very little EBITDA. And so it's trading at like call it $50 million market. And I was like, Tom, how the hell? It's in Chantilly, Virginia. What are we going to do with this rapidly melting iceberg?
Chantilly, Virginia. That sounds like a made-up place.
By the way, it might be for all intents and purposes. It could have been.
Yeah.
Right? And so and he was a dog with a bone. And he would listen to the earnings calls. He would call the management team and get whatever he could. There was like one analyst covering.
I was going to say, not a lot of people dialing into that.
That tells you a lot about Tom, right? So Tom was on me. Trevor introduces me to Hari. Hari comes by the office and we're just having this conversation. And I'm like, okay, this guy's a stud. And I said, Hari, if you want to use this as our starting point, like we would do that with you. And he called me a month later. He's like, I've been digging into it. Let's go do this thing.
And he didn't have a product at the time?
Hari did not. I mean, he was tinkering.
Tinkering,
at the time, kind of thing. I forgot. I don't think he had anything.
And so then you guys buy it for 50 million.
So we buy. I think if you loaded it up with all the equity that we had to give, I think it was 95 or something.
95.
Ultimately, something in that range.
And then how did the rest of the business come together, and how did it actually turn around? Did they take the same product and just sell it to consumers?
We used the kernel of it, and then everything kind of got just built on top of that. I mean, honestly, it turns out look, there's a big benefit of buying something, which is you get to skip the 0 to 1 phase. The bad news about it is that the reason it's being sold to you is because everything else is broken.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we thought we'd like coach whatever the team was into greatness. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's a complete redo of everything. You're building a company.
How many people were there, you think? 100?
I don't.
200?
No, probably a couple hundred.
Couple hundred.
And what do you think's like how much turnover? You think it's 50% left or 10% left?
I don't think anybody's there.
Oh, really? So like 0%.
I think it might be 0.
Yeah.
By the way, they were all good people.
I'm sure.
Critiquing. I mean, it just meant
you
like
sign up for something that's different.
We reset something. We were trying to create something totally. It was just a starting point for us. It wasn't like we were trying to be in the identity protection business.
Totally.
It was just felt like a great way to really kickstart into this thing. And then of course we knew that the first thing to do is stabilize. It took us a couple of years, to get the thing to stabilize. I forget exactly where it stabilized, but it's definitely below 100 million. And then what we did a bunch of crazy stuff with this, which is we took the what became the growth part, which was tiny, like it's probably single digit millions. And we took all the non-growth stuff and moved it into something which was much more like a Constellation software style company, which we called Pango.
Different holdco or different?
It was all together in a sense.
Got it.
But all the strategic, like super innovative, like all the R&D spent, everything like that went into Aura.
Good stuff here.
Yeah, well, not the other stuff was good too.
Growth
stuff. Yeah,
stuff.
growth. Like what can potentially change the world went into Aura,
Yeah.
And what was going to be like our version of a private equity business went into Pango, and then about 18 months ago, Hari, sort of through a personal experience of his, landed on what I think will end up being the biggest play, which is, we're doing phenomenally well in protecting people online. That's growing like really fast now, and the unit economics are insane. And like Hari's a stud, so it's all just working.
And roughly, whatever you guys can share on scale.
200 million.
200 million.
Or is 200 million. Pango's much bigger, actually.
Yeah.
Pango's huge, actually.
Yeah.
Pango's awesome business, but anyways, whatever. So we can talk about that too.
So Aura's growing super quickly.
So Aura's growing really fast. It's got, and about 18 months ago, Hari was thinking like V3 of the product, like what's going to be the next thing. And he had an incident happen in his family where one of his children kind of went in, kind of took a left turn sort of thing. And he went through her phone and was like, and he's a very involved parent. He's a great dad. We vacation together. I see it. And he was like, oh my God, all the signals were here. I'm her dad. And all the signals were here. I run the fastest growing consumer, online digital protection company in the world. And I had no clue. And V3 of the product basically became, how do I leverage the data that's being, through, like the messages you're sending, the people you're following on Instagram, all the network traffic, all that stuff, to give parents insight into what's happening on their young children's devices that can inform them about how they can parent better. And it's
without becoming spyware.
Yeah, it's not spyware. Exactly.
Right.
We're not giving you their
won't...
messages and all that sort of stuff. It's interpreting the signal. So I'll give you a really simple example. If you have a 12-year-old daughter and she's downloading calorie tracking apps and she's following fitness people on social media and so on and so forth, good chance you have an eating disorder coming your way. Right now, people don't have a clue. They get blindsided by this stuff, right? Or let's say your kid is on their device from 1 to 3 a.m. every night, and that was not the case a month ago. Like, odds are, not only is their sleep getting disrupted, odds are something has changed in their life and something's wrong, right? Let's say they're communicating with a whole new set of friends, whether it's text or WhatsApp or Discord or whatever, probably something is disrupted. If there's suicidal ideation and communication around that, which, by the way, like in our beta set of customers, we have 2,500 users that we were beta testing before we announced the product a week ago. I mean, what was the percentage?
I'm going to read it to you.
20% or something, some horrifying percentage of kids, like 11 to 15, have suicidal ideation that they're communicating to people. And so this, social media's done a lot of great things for the world, but there's a real dark side that we all know logically. Yeah. The evidence is not, scientific evidence is not there. The data sets are not public
yet.
So
here are the stats. 2,500 kids between 12 and 18 years old. So it's pretty significant, okay? 46% of them are depressed. 35% have social withdrawal. 22% are up late night on their device. So sleeping disorder. 30% with low self-esteem. 22% with self-harm / suicidal thoughts. And 52% with an eating issue. So
that's our own data. That's not some third-party data. That's the data that we have from our beta users.
And that's based on who they're following and what messages are being sent.
Honestly, we use a lot of. It's a lot of machine learning, right? There's a tremendous amount of data that funnels in,
right. And so, rather than actually, as Sujay said, we're not actually as a parent, it is giving you knowledge, information, insight, without actually going into the personalization. And the only time it will surface to you an alert is when there's something that we know is actually harmful.
Sure. And I assume there'll be dials or something.
Yes. So if you have a 10-year-old...
We built it with Boston Children's Hospital.
Got it.
So all the child psychiatrists there...
Got it.
But also, think of it as when you have a kid and they're now about to be able to get a driver's license, right? Was the first thing, they have a learner's permit. And you have certain things that you need to do. And then they go from a learner's permit into a, kid's permit, 16 years old in this. And that has certain restrictions around it. And you have to have a driver's test. And you're able to mentor your kid into being safe in a car. Well, this is the same thing. You need to mentor, but you can't mentor them if you don't know it. When you grew up, your parents knew 3 things: where you were, who you were with, and what you were doing. Right? Today, you can have a 13-year-old sitting across the table from you, and you literally cannot answer those 3 questions. They may be at that table. It's not where they are. On this device, they've gone to other places in a way that was never, ever, ever possible in this. And so parents today, they're drowning. Like literally, they're out in the middle of the ocean, and they're just trying to stay afloat, and they have no tools. 50%
of parents in surveys will say that when their kid goes to sleep, they go and try to read everything that's happening on their device. Like that's the best tool that they have. And of course, kids are way too smart for that.
And so this this has gone from actually being a really, really good business and something where, Hari and Sujay were like, driven to build a great business that was going to be a fantastic. It's now turned into a mission.
Yeah.
Because we actually feel, as I said, we can be givers here, not takers. in this, in which we can actually give parents the wherewithal to be great parents. And there, as I say, there's not a parent. You have kids?
For maybe by the time we release this. Yeah.
So, but you'll just see when you get to that age there. I was actually at breakfast this morning, someone who's got an 11-year-old boy, you know, and she was actually struggling when I described this. And I showed her what this actually does. It was like, okay, well, how fast can I mean, I'm desperate. I need this. And so does every other parent in my group. And honestly, this happens 3 times a day, every day for every one of us in it. And so we actually just launched the product 2 weeks ago. It's got a whole bunch of features and functions that come out over the next, call it 4 to 6 months, when it will be a sort of full.
Are you guys, you're gating signups, or can anyone go and sign up right now?
We've made it so it's slow to start.
Yeah, got it.
Because we want to just really nail it.
Measure.
And as Jeffrey said, we've got a handful of things that we think are required before it's perfect.
Yeah.
4 to 6, well, you're never perfect, but you know what I mean. 4 to 6 months from now.
Well, and all these things are trade-offs. We were talking about the privacy side of things, but like anything else in the world, there's, you know, with freedom comes other considerations in all of this. You get a phone, you get the ability to go.
You start with a 10 or 11-year-old, which is the conversation I had this morning. I said, listen, you're about to give, or you've given your son a device that's cost you somewhere between $500 and $1,000.
By the time we release it, it'll be 7,000.
Yeah.
Well, next week.
Tomorrow, by the way.
Next week, and the planes that had taken off, maybe, or landed, they're okay. $50 a month for various subscriptions and things that are on this. And so at 11 years old, I'm okay with you having it, but just understand that in return for that, I am going to have observational and controls. And so in an 11-year-old, you're not going to let them go on to sites and places that you know they should not be on at their age. So there's very specific features and functions and controls that you can determine how long, what time of day. And so every parent, the beauty of the product is that each parent can make that choice with their kid about what level of control. And the controls on the 11-year-old versus a 17 or an 18-year-old will not look anything like that, right? And also the way the parental controls model works here, there's a lot of different area, like functional aspects here, but one of them is fine-grained parental controls, where you can basically set timers for various apps. And then the kid has to come to you and say, hey, listen, I'm working on my school project. I really need YouTube for another hour. And you can decide whether to give it to them or not. But it allows you as a parent to actually finally have some constraints. I mean, you'll see this when your child turns like 3, they can watch slime videos on YouTube forever
for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Like it's the most bizarre thing. I have 3 little kids. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my entire life. They love watching humans play with slime.
So here's the thing, which is, go back to your thing, which is, this is only possible today because of machine learning and AI. It was not, we couldn't have done this 3 years ago.
You could do it with a sledgehammer, but not in a fine-grained way.
Not in a way that would be, the kids
agreeable
would buy
to the kids.
into it, the parents would buy into it. And so that this is where one of the amazing benefits that are going to come out of it. And for, we actually feel like we're on a mission right now, that if we can deliver the promise of what this is, the impact of this will be just beyond anything certain I've ever done in my career. And I think that's saying something.
What's the, so the funding history of the company? So it came together with...
You don't want to hear about dog grooming.
No, I don't know. We can get to that. We might... This is a little more... This is a little more on topic.
That's a different one. So the funding history here, so we put money in, I don't remember exactly. This one was early 2019 as when we finally got the deal done, the first one. And then we did it, I forgot how much General Catalyst invested, but Trevor's been with us since the get-go. And then, there's been a bunch of it. It's been a journey. And so Excel's, the cap table is basically, I'll say where it's at. It's hard to remember the exact history of it, but it's us, General Catalyst, Warburg Pincus, Excel. And then more recently, 1011 Ventures and Madrone came in. And, but then we have other ones, right? Like we own the largest mobile VPN in the world. 350 million downloads last year. We own 65% of it. The CEO used to run engineering for me at another company, and he's an absolute animal. And so, no, what happened was there was a founder in Singapore that had created this product. Now we've just got to know the space so well that we basically approached, and they hadn't done a bit. It was like a person with a product, and we said, "Listen, are you interested in selling that product?" And we built a company around it. And so he didn't invent the product, but it was, when we bought it, it was tiny. And now it's, I think it's probably 65 million of revenue and 30 of EBITDA now. And we bought it for 20 million bucks. Yeah.
These are all creative deals in some ways. Like, is that, as you sort of, what bucket does this go into? Are these these are builds?
Because the company, they wouldn't exist.
They wouldn't exist otherwise.
And we know them cold.
Yeah.
Like
you were an extension of the management team. This is
like, there's not much that we're particularly good at, but the things that we do builds in are things that we have confidence in ourselves that we're really good at.
I always have this line, which is that, I know something about everything and everything about very little.
Yeah.
In the builds, we stick to the things that
you stay within the line, the fairway.
The ones that the few that we know.
And we can still be wrong, by the way, but we're confident when we do them.
Yeah. Now, I guess as we wrap, so are you still having fun doing this?
Here's what I will say to you. He's heard this, which was sort of I
assume he's heard all of this in some way, shape, or form.
But it's, I found these words a few years, maybe a year or two ago, and they actually are every day, which is never let your memories be better than your dreams.
That was going to be my second question, was asking about that quote here. I actually didn't ask a single question in my sheet. I have like 12 pages of notes or something.
So I don't actually know who originally said it. I went and searched and I couldn't actually find attribution of it. I thought maybe I should just take attribution.
I was going to say, Katzenberg's rule of life.
I come from Hollywood, and that's a mistake.
Yeah. I'll come back to my shit somewhere.
And go, no, you did not.
Yeah.
So I did not, but I didn't create it, but I own it.
Yeah.
And that every day, I really do feel it. I just, it couldn't be more exciting. I learned so much, literally every day. There are things that I never knew, I didn't understand. I have a great teacher here. I have great teachers and my partners. It's super exciting. And it's hard for people. He always says this, well, that's great, but how about making Top Gun? And I go, nah, it was great, but that's back, and I don't want to make. I did that. I did hundreds of those, literally, and most of them were bombs, by the way. So we're not many of them were like that. But so, I find that the creating and the building of the companies today, and the fact that this is all new for me, is just incredibly energizing. And yes, it's just wildly fun.
Well, you guys have a great partnership dynamic. I can see between how you guys work together and how you balance and all that.
It's funny. It just reminded me of this conversation I had in front of so someone was asking, like, when Jeffrey and when we finally decided to get WndrCo going, I told you it was like a few months of dating or whatever you want to call it. Like, I was really struggling with the idea of this thing, which was worth zero, this idea of cutting it in half. I was like, why would I give half my company, which didn't exist, away? That was like kind of in my head. And Jeffrey looks at me and he's like, what's your problem? I'm 65 years old. This is gonna be your fucking thing in 10 years anyways. And literally I was telling this story to a friend of mine the other day. I was like, and the reason I was telling this, I was like, literally, my worst fear would be if Jeffrey decided to not do this anymore, because he is the magic.
For 1 year.
It's like this thing that's just so funny about life, right? Which is, you meet people very rarely like him who have qualities that you literally don't see in anybody else. Like, I ran into this, I don't want to name drop, but like this very famous movie star yesterday who I know through Jeffrey. And he was asking how Jeffrey was doing and this and that. And I said, listen, like, Jeffrey's a maniac. If he's got 20 minutes of free time, he's going to spend that free time figuring out how to schedule something to schedule his next Tuesday, because he doesn't want to waste 20 minutes of his day. Whereas he and I, the other guy and I were joking. We're like, well, we need to start the morning, get a cup of coffee. It's just, Jeffrey is he's like a once in my lifetime, at least, kind of person to be around. And that's what makes life fun, right? To get to work with someone who you like, are just, you're just mesmerized by the habits and the practices and the kind of the ideas and all that sort of stuff. It's cool. And, you know, it's different with each of the people we get to work with, but that's what makes a partnership. That's what makes a partnership fun, right? That's the point of it. Otherwise, you're spending all your time attributing like who did what deal and how much credit do I deserve for that? And how are we splitting up the economics based on this or that? And what a horrible way to spend your time.
Yeah.
You know, it's so much more fun to just partner on figuring out what crazy stuff are we going to do together. Does it have a chance of changing the world? When it doesn't work, we all roll up our sleeves. Don't get me wrong, you can get tense at moments because that's the nature of doing hard things. But at the end of the day, there's this foundation of trust and love and like a commitment to like trying to do something together. That's really, really fun.
It's a good place to end. Thank you guys for doing this. A lot of fun.
Thanks.
No, it's great to meet you. Great
Appreciate
to
it.
really
Thank you.
Yeah.